Hello everyone, and welcome to Young China. We are a half Chinese Brit and a Siberian Russian living in China. We use our unique perspectives to demystify and translate Chinese culture and lifestyle. My name is Lucien.
My name is Artem. We are entrepreneurs who made it in China, and now we are sharing our experience with you. And last time we talked about Chinese food, which is not finished. For sure we will come back to this topic again.
I think that might be the biggest topic in China, actually.
Should we actually invite someone who really understands food?
That's like any average Chinese person, because they all love food so much.
Like underweight guy from Russia who like also eating like outside always, and the guy who is eating every single day the same stuff.
I don't think
we don't have this authority to talk about this. In the end of November, I don't know actually how we will record the next episode, because I'm going to Dongbei.
Oh wow!
In the north of China.
Wow.
To Tieling. Tieling city is near Shenyang. It will be event about science and innovations in Yidai Ilu. One road, one belt.
One belt, one road.
One belt, one road. So more about like China and Russian cooperation in innovation and scientific field. And I am like a famous scientist and innovator going there. No, actually I'm like entrepreneur and journalist. I'm going there. So, and now we are in the south, which actually is interesting because like I know that Guangdong people like don't count Shanghai as south.
Well, the thing with China is that it's such a massive country that when you're in Guangdong, which is the extreme south of the country, even Shanghai, which is midway point of China, seems like the north. And then, of course, the north is an extreme north to southern Chinese.
But according to this traditional way of splitting China to south and north, Shanghai is south. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, like, there is very famous concept of every time people talking about North China, South China is so different. I'm not a big fan of this concept because I think China is more diverse than just like North and South. But okay, let's people want to know about this more, and let's talk today about this thing.
I mean, I actually disagree with you on that. I think there's a very big and very clear delineation between North and South, right? Particularly in the extreme side. So on the south, you've got Guangdong, Fujian, Guangxi, Jiangxi. They're very southern. You feel the southern. I mean, it's in the air, it's in the temperature, it's in the climate, it's in the way that people dress and the way that people eat and the way that people just are. And the same goes for the northern regions, which is all the places in Dongbei. Dongbei is actually 3 separate provinces, and they're kind of clustered as one in the popular imagination. And then there's Inner Mongolia, Gansu, and so on.
But originally, the border between south and north of China, dividing line, is Huaihe River. Mm-hmm. You can actually Google like North and South China. There are a lot of maps. It goes through Jiangsu province and Anhui. Mm-hmm. So the northern part of Anhui is already like a northern China. Mm-hmm. And all provinces with a down is like southern China.
And one very easy way to see which is north and which is south is by the distribution of radiators and central heating. So North China, they all have central heating, and southern China, none of it has central heating. As in central heating run by the government.
Yeah, and
so you cross the river, and of course the climate between this part of the river and the other side of the river is like the same. And those guys over there, they've got heating, and these guys over here have no heating.
But the weather is almost the same.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
For example, in Anhui, they have real winter. I mean, like they have snow. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like -10 or something, which is like, and it's already cold, and they don't have central heating. I don't know how they live there, because like me, like I'm Siberian, we have like -40 sometimes in the winter, but it doesn't matter because we have central heating, and it's good. Even like in not good houses, old houses, central heating always work well. This is one of the best thing what like Soviet Russia gave to us, you know. And yeah, if we start to talk about differences, the first thing is the climate for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, like north colder, obviously. South is like warmer, but it's too obvious. There are another differences in climate. For example, rainy and wet weather in the south, and more sunny weather and not that much rain in the north. And if we have difference in climate, we have difference in nature,
I think there's a difference with everything. So I think for the sake of this podcast, I think we should talk about north and south, the ones that we kind of consider north and south. So let's say Dongbei, and then the northern regions, and then the southern regions like Guangdong and Guangxi, and we'll leave out Henan and Anhui because they're middle sections, I think.
But they're really middled in their culture. For example, what do they eat? If we northern people eat more like mian or wheat stuff and like mianbao and noodles at the staple, and southern people eat rice. And I ask like my Anhui friends what they eat. We are eating both,
Yeah, but that's true, right? That's completely true because they're a mix. And so they're a mix of the cultures, mix of the climates, mix of everything. But at the same time, I think Chinese people, they like to think of things in terms of north and south. I think we don't talk about Henan and Anhui really being within these clusters because in a way the more extreme cultures they're a bit more interesting than the ones that people talk about, right? Because that's where you get interesting deviations coming through. So in terms of like the language, so in Beijing or Dongbei, they have this very thick R sound, right? And they're a bit more direct. It sounds almost aggressive if you're not a native speaker or if you're not used to it.
The northern regions actually have one of the best Mandarin. I mean, like even they speak dialects, they're all dialects closer to Mandarin because Mandarin base is Beijing dialect, which is northern dialect. So if we talk about differences in languages, north is more uniform. They all understand each other anyway, and they're actually many of them proud that their Mandarin is good, and they're always like mocking on southerns. Like it doesn't matter from where, Sichuan or Hunan or like Guangdong people or Shanghainese, their Mandarin is like not that good, right?
But then I will say this though. A lot of my friends, they always say their hometown has the best Mandarin or is the golden standard for Mandarin.
Northern people.
But now that I think about it, you're probably right. I think they are all northern people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Even Zilin guys, for example, or like Shenyang guys, they always kind of have an argue which Mandarin is the best and more original.
But that's really funny because I've got some friends from Dongbei and the way they speak Chinese is not standard at all. In 普通话 in Mandarin, it'd be like 你在干嘛?你在干什么? And in Dongbei ver, like the Dongbei like style, it becomes 干呀?你干啥呀?
No, Dongbei Hua for sure is like a bit different with Mandarin, but if you talk about
there is no Dongbei Hua,
Hubei,
right?
or like this region Shanxi, they speak more.
But there is
real Mandarin.
But there is no real Dongbei Hua in the sense of a dialect. It's a style. It's a style of Mandarin. It doesn't become a dialect. It doesn't.
It's
like
dialect.
No, but like Shanghainese is an actual dialect.
Okay,
right?
it's like how difference is like from the Mandarin. Yeah, for sure. Like Shanghainese, let's say it's another language. In
a sense.
And then Dongbei Hua is a real dialect in this thing.
Okay, I mean, from my understanding, I would consider it more a variation or like a stylistic change to Mandarin, standard Mandarin, right? So instead of saying 关门, which means close the door, they say 关门.
It's more Beijing Hua, really.
Right.
Like Dongbei Ren, it's still not that big R of all things, really. It's more like Beijing thing. Anyway, if we talk about like differences between North and South, go back again. So North is more like all about closer to Mandarin, which is like, and have dialects, which is like really dialects. And South is like variety of many languages, actually.
Really.
Which like you need just by characters written Chinese. So, but if we talk about oral only language, totally different. And the thing is like a lot of varieties. Under Shanghainese, there are also some other dialects. Under Guangdong dialect, the Cantonese, there are a lot of different types of Cantonese. And like, I don't know, it's mass. So North, in terms of language, is much easier for foreign, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's very interesting is because traditionally Chinese people, they didn't move around so much, right? I mean, you know, like thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, you'd be stuck in your village and you didn't really travel that much. So even from village to village, town to town, city to city, within the same region, there's huge variations. And that's really, really interesting because in the modern age, it's so easy to go to the next town or the next village. But still, those places still retain that language. Also, other aspects of the culture like food.
But this diversity you can notice more in the south.
Sure.
In the north, it's historically and traditionally the government power was much higher.
Yeah.
And that's why like it's and actually China comes from the north. If we again come to this border, Huaihe. So and southern they have a lot of small kingdoms and small lords, who was like controlling the things. So and this is actually interesting feature of north and south. Also that north is more political, right? I know how to explain. Have you been to Beijing? Have you talked to taxi drivers?
It is. People are more interested in politics in the north. I think this is a generalization, of course, but people in the south are a bit more concerned with economics and money. And so you see now, Guangdong province, which is in the south, it's very wealthy. Fujian province as well, very wealthy, because they're full of traders, they do a lot of business. Also Zhejiang, which is in the south, Wenzhou people specifically, they are the biggest number of emigrants to other countries. They're the ones that maybe in your local town in England or America opening up Chinese restaurants or laundrettes. They're very entrepreneurial, and that's a very big trait of Southerners. They're very big into business. I think the Northerners, on the whole, they're less entrepreneurial.
But the interesting thing, even like Northern people are more into politics. Most of the revolutions and different rebels starts from southern regions. That's also interesting because like from the history, southern regions were more like freedom, and only like in the Qing Empire, they conquered the whole south and made it a real part of China. So every time Beijing become weak, southern provinces become independent, Even like the last Qing dynasty, finish of this dynasty began with the independences of the southern province, So, and the expedition to warlords started from Guangdong. It's interesting concept. I mean, like still like north is more into central government and southern are more, even now. I mean, like, yes, it's like one country, but in terms of doing businesses, you tell, and in terms of like connections between other countries, they are still more like independent.
I've got two stories here. I'm not sure if we should broadcast this, but I will tell them. So I've got this friend from Shenzhen, and she's around my age, 30-ish, and she has an older brother and an older sister. And I was really shocked when she told me that because I thought there was a one-child policy, right? And she was like, yes, there always has been, but we live in the south. And rules are a little bit less strict there. They're harder to enforce, right? They're actually further away from Beijing. So it's harder to enforce a lot of rules. So they just paid a penalty. They paid a fine and things were okay after that. And that was it. I think her mum actually used to work for the police or a government department. Actually, she lost her job for it. But Cantonese people, they really, really value family. I think even more so than other Chinese or other Asians. And I think then it's a worthwhile sacrifice to make, losing the job to have 3 children.
But the same rules works in the north. I mean, like you pay penalty and you can keep the child.
Sure, but I think from what she was saying that it happens a lot more in the south than it does in the north.
Because they're richer.
They're richer, but also they're just further away and it's harder to enforce rules. It's like when I was traveling around in end of January, early February during the virus. When you're far away from big cities, it's just hard to enforce rules. So I was in Guilin just as the virus was breaking out and everyone had a mask there. And then I was traveling on the slow trains into like 4th and 5th, 6th tier, like little towns, and no one had masks on. And I was wearing a mask, and actually people, when they saw me wearing the mask in the small towns, they actually avoided me because it was very clear that I was an outsider, not from their town, right? They're still all out, they're playing cards, they're like having fun in the streets, they're like their markets are open, even though the central government has issued notices saying that everything should be shut down. Things are still going on. And also, I just came back from a press trip to Tongxiang, which is a small town in Zhejiang. And we were met and welcomed by the government guys there. And what was really striking for me was just how friendly and how down to earth they were. Because in my mind, I think in the minds of lots of people all over the world, government is always this kind of almost oppressive, very high up, like very distant from you, a group of people like that. Whereas here they'd be like the guy on the street. Like you couldn't tell from the way they acted or walked or talked or the way they dressed from another guy on the street. And that was really refreshing. And I asked him, actually, how come you're so different to what I expected? And he said that in Zhejiang specifically, but he said South generally, the government tries to make this effort to facilitate the economy and facilitate what people want to do, like running businesses or doing events, right? So they see themselves as service people and facilitators for the citizens. Whereas he said that the north has a problem, and he's actually from Shandong, which is the north. He said that the northern government, they're a bit more distant and they're a bit more like top down. So that was a very interesting perspective to hear from a local government official in terms of how government and people interact in the north and the south.
And northern people is more conservative in many ways. I mean, like, they're not that open to changes, and even like reform and opening to the world starts from the southern regions, right? In eastern southern regions. So people here like are more welcome to the even like imported products. If you want to sell something to Chinese people, like for sure some new product, you better start from south. I mean, like even from Sichuan, whatever, like Yunnan, they are even more open than northern people. And the same like goes to higher levels, to politics. So they start trying to distance themselves because, like, you know, originally the power there, like government guys always there. Anyway, it's the center, you know, Beijing influence is so big to all regions around, right? And the guys who is sitting there, they still like more, they are central government. They are not like local governments most.
Do you feel that we'll get blocked by Himalaya again? Because we said
try.
the word government about 1 million times just now.
Let's see. You mentioned also very interesting like feature of southern people. They're more like traditional, let's say more like in the family. It's actually an interesting mix of how they open to some innovations. Let's say even Guangdong is the most developed province in China, and the richest people there. But usually if you, for example, say to some Chinese friends that you are dating southern girl, then says, oh, they're very traditional. They're not that kaifang. They're not that open as northern girls. So, while like northern people are more conservative maybe in the mind on some like big issues, but in terms of like lifestyle, probably southerns are more traditional. They still care about etiquette. They still care about some ceremonies, you know, like, and even tea drinking is more like a southern culture when they're really sitting and like talking for a long time with all this, you know, ceremony is very important.
I think you made a really good point there. I think that's really interesting is how Chinese people view each other. Because of course, it's such a massive country and there's so many different provinces. The regional variations are massive, right? So in the south, they think that everyone in Dongbei, they don't shower very much.
Like a barbarian.
Yeah, they're like barbarians. They only eat meat and potatoes. They don't shower. You know, these kinds of stereotypes. And I think it's really, really interesting how people inside view each other.
But it's going deeper than difference between north and south. You know, they don't say the same about, no, actually they say, you know what southern people say about Beijing? It's a big village.
Really?
Sometimes I feel these vibes, really.
In what way?
It's interesting. I don't know, like when you go to Beijing, I have never liked it so much. It's good. Like last 2 of my trips was good. I can feel that people there like a capital people. They quite educated. They, especially like older generation, you can see that they're like from the China center. But still, the people, like the service in cafe restaurants, their attitude, even the way their habits, this old Chinese spitting on the ground and all the things, like it's probably we'll hear these things and see more in northern China. Not only Dongbei, but even Beijing, which is like capital. And if you see all that, like older generation mostly, but even young people, I got my friend who is living in Beijing, and she came here to Shanghai for the first time. And after 1 week, she said like, wow, your guys here is so like fashionable. Here, like all the youngsters, they are like wearing so cool. Beijing guys are not that bright.
Oh, I don't know how to answer that.
That's
actually a really interesting thing.
I even had a pause before. After one of my business trip to Beijing, I realized that all people wearing black or like very dark colors.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked some people and say, I don't know, because maybe smog, because it's too dirty in Beijing. I said, okay, you don't wear white, but why not like red or yellow or something? I don't know. They don't understand, but really, it's a big difference. If you go to Shanghai or Guangdong, any cities, it's like more bright.
Sure.
And Beijing, even in the best day, I mean, not like when it's smoky, you know, like actually it's a big difference also, south and north.
Yeah, the air quality is a big difference.
Yeah,
really.
Even here in like Zhejiang or Jiangxi, or even Fujian, where there's a lot of light industry factories, it's still not that bad as in the north, because all that heavy industries like and coal power plants, they're all in the north.
You know, we've got this phrase in England, it's grim up north. It just means like it's rough up north. I think that applies also in China as well, in the way it does in England. It applies in China
You're
as well.
so teeny.
Yeah, I know.
It's like one province of China.
But I think England is a really interesting case study because the north and south divide is really, really big. But the capital, of course, is in the south, and also the money and the wealth and the education tends to be in the south as well. The north tends to be a lot poorer. And so it's interesting here where the history is in the north in China, but the money is in the south.
Yeah.
Right?
If you go for historical places, for sure it's north. Because again, like China, real China comes from the north.
I mean, of course, there's historical places all over China, right? But the things that we know about the Great Wall, Forbidden Palace, that's all up north.
Yeah, and maybe also like Beijing, it seems like a big village because it's all very low. The buildings are low. They're not that skyscrapers and whatever, but they don't need it.
But you know how other foreigners call Shanghai? They call it China Light. As in, it's the easiest and lightest experience of China you can possibly have. And Beijing, if you can live in Beijing as a foreigner or even as a local Chinese person, then you're really making it, because it's cold, it's rough, it's tough.
And now we are coming to another topic like Beijing and Shanghai.
Yeah, that's a big one.
We can talk about this later, but let's not generalize like Shanghai for the whole south.
For the
let's
north,
say Hunan or Guangdong.
But let's just say the north. Anytime I travel there, it's just things are a lot more rough and tough, and not like it's not dangerous, but people are just a lot more direct, right?
This is more comfortable. Let's say like when I go there, and especially for my customers who like we go to factories in the north, they prefer go there because people are more straightforward, like Russian people, probably really like northern people are more straightforward. They don't have time. It's too cold outside. They don't have time to talk a lot. They just like come to the deal. Quite. Well, like, yeah, and then like tell what you think. And southern people, that's how when people say that Chinese people are so foxy, they never say no. They like so goes around the topic. This is southern people.
Actually, on that topic, I've been here in Shanghai for 5 years. I've become more like that. I used to be very direct. And now when I want to refuse someone, I'll find an idea or an excuse, or I'll be like, oh, but actually this is a better idea. Or actually, oh, I'm busy that day. And I'm conscious of myself doing it. And it's interesting how I've changed like that. And it's something that I'm striving to change again, back to being more direct.
I love to work with northern people. Really, it's so good. Even sometimes it's a bit rude. Because I spent 7 years in Guangdong, where you cannot be rude at all. Let other people lose face, and you're like done,
But it's an interesting concept of face, right? Because all of China has this face concept.
They have it
different in the north as to south.
But northern people doesn't care so much about some let's say small issues. They're more straightforward and more relaxed in terms of like some sensitive topics. I mean, like in lifestyle. Sensitive topics.
Do you think that the north retains this kind of very Chinese element because actually above the north is Mongolia and then Kazakhstan and a very, very empty part of Russia.
Yeah, even Dongbei before it's Manchuria part, which was like Manchu.
Yeah, Manchurians.
They were not Chinese.
But my point is that actually above northern China, it's just like empty space, practically speaking, right? And the south, there's Southeast Asia, and then there's the sea. So actually people can come in on through the sea, right? Which is a lot easier than going through like the Siberian tundra. And I think that's probably why they're a bit more used to foreigners, used to like engaging with other people. And actually,
southern people.
Yeah, southern people. So actually, if you look at, say, for example, Fujian, they actually had Arabs there, like literally thousands of years ago, like people who'd like come as traders and like lived and stayed there, you know, and had families and generations going on. So the South has had this rich tradition of foreign exchange for years and years, decades, centuries, even millennia.
Yeah, and all these Christian missionaries, they all come from the south.
Yeah.
And they went like so deep into southern China, like in Sichuan, in Yunnan mountains, they were there like 200 or 300 years ago.
Yeah.
And for northern, it's like Russian people only come. They call us Maozi. It's like a hairy guy because like before Russian guys have a bird, you know, like and Asian people didn't have. So they used to call us like Maozi.
What do they call you now? I remember you were telling me 2 or 3 years ago that because Putin wouldn't...
Zhando Mingzu, now it's also called. Zhando Mingzu means not
like a warrior
nation.
Clan.
Yeah,
warrior nation, right?
Nation, which is like good in Chinese. In Chinese, they love this, you know, powerful. So it's not offensive word, but Maozi is a bit offensive. Yeah.
Okay. So what was the reasoning for the being called Zhangdong Nation?
Because Russian government started few wars, like not started few wars. We got the Crimea.
Okay.
Part of another country.
How
did
you get it? It just got given.
There was no war. We just come. We called it like green guys come there, and guys come.
Yeah, this is classic Russian propaganda at work. Some green guys on holiday, right? Just hanging out.
Yeah.
They brought some guns as well and some tanks.
But
they're just hanging out.
No. I don't want to talk about. We talk about China here, right? So,
I'm editing this, by the way, and we're going to keep that section in. Okay.
We can keep. Let's go to food. One of the most big difference, it's food for sure. Yes, we cannot. It's still like as we mentioned in previous episode, there are at least 8 different types of Chinese food. But if we talk generally, not only about like northern people eat noodles, southern people eat rice. What are the differences?
I think it's generally accepted that northern food is nowhere near as good as southern food.
Yeah,
right? Sure. In the south, they use a lot more spices and they're a lot more adventurous with their food.
Yeah.
The north is basically just salty meat and salty potatoes and salty bread. Because, I mean, it's cold, right? So you want something that's hearty and thick and filling.
Yeah, it's closer to Russian food, but not that poor anyway. I mean, like, Beijing food is okay. Maybe not that much variety, but still. And it's much salty. And I mean, like the northern food, much salty, more meat for sure, a lot of meat. And like, as we said, noodles and mianbao, like bread and mantou. And
another type of bread.
Yeah, kind of type of
bread and bread. But that just goes to show.
And Chinese say like 重口味. How to say? Can't translate it better. 重口味. Northern people like 重口味. I mean, like when you eat after northern food, you really feel like you're
like you really had a meal.
Yeah,
like a really proper. It's like for Westerners, it's like having a Sunday roast.
Yeah, kind of.
For every meal.
Yeah,
lunch
always.
And dinner. Yeah. On the whole, the South is tastier, and it's very difficult to say that it's lighter in taste. But definitely, there's more variations. But say with Guangdong, they use a little less oil for their foods, and it's lightly fried, and it's very quick, stir fried. Whereas if you go to like Hunan, they use a lot of oil, a lot of oil. Same with Chongqing, Chengdu. So it's very difficult to start making these generalizations in terms of food in the south. But on the whole, I think it's safe to say tastier, probably a fresher taste.
I mean, like they just eat more vegetables, use more different spices, for sure more seafood, and more different like stuff. I don't know, mushrooms.
There's more variation of foods, basically.
I mean,
right?
like not only meat. I mean,
And
like
bread,
if you're
bread,
vegan,
bread.
for sure, like it's easier to eat southern, one of the southern cuisine.
Cuisines, yeah.
Cuisines. And if we talk about meals, talk about like drinking culture, and for sure, again, like if you ask any Chinese people who is the heaviest drinkers in China, they will say Dongbeiren, which actually almost true.
I think Shandong people, they love to drink.
Yeah. If you check the official statistics, Shandong people are the like heaviest drinking.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, like on per capita,
Yeah.
they drink the most alcohol per year. But it's different. They drink this jingju or like some wine, whatever, Chinese wine, but they just drink every time. You know, like every dinner, but not that much. But Dongbei people, maybe they don't drink every day. But actually, I saw every day. Like, if you go to Beijing, you can see this different. Actually, many people have this argatol small bottle in the dinner. A lot of people, like or on lunch time.
Yeah,
a lot of old guys like lunchtime. They just like proper meal and then like small argatol bottle or at least beer.
is a form of alcohol here. So actually, my friend Miyuki, she's a very pretty, very dainty girl on the outside, right? But she's from Shandong. And when she drinks, like she really drinks.
Yeah.
So she just becomes like this different person. And so last time we were out, like normally you would say 很帅, which means very handsome. But she was like really like very getting into this real Shandong mode. And she was like 很帅, 很帅. And you're like, oh my God, who are you? I've never seen you like this. What happened to the old Miyuki? In my experience, Shandong people, they're the ones who like, they love to drink and they love to like drink to excess. They want to get wasted.
I think it's true for most of the northern regions. But especially people say that the heaviest, the most lihai drinkers, the most lihai.
The most, oh my God, my English is so bad. Like, have you found this? Like living here in China, you're heaviest drinkers. No, what were you asking?
Lihai.
The strongest drinkers.
Lihai. Strongest drinkers.
The best drinkers.
Is
the best
Mongolian. Like inner Mongolian guys. Yeah. But again, if we talk about 少数民族, ethnic minorities, the heaviest drinkers are Daizu, which is actually Thai, like Thailand, like a Thai people. Almost the same. And they live in Yunnan province. And they drink a lot. It's again official statistics.
Wow!
And they drink some like the very sweet kind of alcohol, and they're having fun every day in the village. You know, like southern vibes and like always holiday festivals. And, you know, so in this and the same minorities can drink a lot. I don't know why. If you go to Guizhou, or like they also drink a lot.
I wonder if that's to do with the separation of work and labor and how much work they're able to do living in smaller towns as opposed to living in the cities. But what you just said is really interesting about how much they drink, because my assistant, she is half ethnic minority, or a quarter actually, and her mum, they actually like go and like get drunk together. She said that her mum just drinks all the time, like all the time. And I was really surprised about that, because they're from Yunnan, and I always thought that people in Yunnan, they're very gentle and very, soft and stuff like that. But actually, apparently in Yunnan, people love to drink. They're a bit like Dongbei, but without the cold.
But generally, for sure, in the north, the drinking culture is more developed. I mean, like they're drinking more, for sure. But in the south, mostly like Han people, which is like
the people that we take as Chinese,
they
normal
can't drink,
Chinese.
really.
Yeah.
If you take Guangdong people or like Shanghainese people, or like many like southern, even from Yunnan, if you take not like Chinese minority, like ethnic minority, they drink literally a small glass of beer, and their face is super red. They always say, I have an allergy for this. Goming, which is actually not.
Yeah.
Just because they just can't drink. It's not allergy.
But I think, again, that doesn't mean that they're drunk. It's just a reaction. Actually, I get it. Like, I have like a tiny sip of wine or beer and my eyes go like bloodshot red.
No, after the second glass, they're drunk usually.
Okay. All right.
Trust me, after like 7 years in Guangdong, Guangdong people really, like, for me it was, we just started, come on guys. It was just like the second bottle and all the table are drunk. If you in Dongguan, like in that factories, you go to some laobans, and if they are locals, it's so easy to win the battle, for me, Siberian guy.
Okay, so have you traveled to like Gansu or like the further northern regions?
Yeah, I've been to Xinjiang, to Gansu also.
Do you find that people in the northeast and the northwest share similar characteristics in terms of culture?
At least the Mandarin there is better, really. I mean, like in big cities, I'm not talking about ethnic minorities. I'm talking about Chinese people. They're much, but still Mandarin is good. I was surprised. In Xinjiang, which is like so far region from Beijing, the Mandarin is much better than in Sichuan, for example.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And no, for sure it's different vibes at all. I mean, like, you cannot, I think, say like Inner Mongolia and Xinjiang is the North China. It's northern China, but the culture and vibes are totally different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially like in Xinjiang, there is a big influence of Muslim culture, and you can feel this. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the food, like they love
and alcohol. Actually, for example, we say northern people can drink. No, many Xinjiang people, like even Uyghurs, they Uyghur. How to say?
Uyghurs. They love to drink. What are you talking about?
Here. But there, it's kind of like really traditional guys. They don't drink that much. And, for example, when I was in Urumqi 10 years ago, there was no McDonald's. Only KFC. Because they don't eat pork. And even no one McDonald's. I don't know what about now. But, yeah, it means like it Muslim culture influenced a lot. Because like in the north, they eat a lot of pork. No, sorry. Still, like, northern people eat more neuro and yang.
Beef and lamb.
Yeah, beef and lamb.
We should start thinking about doing this podcast in Chinese, maybe.
For Himalaya.
Yeah, we could do.
Young China, and it will be Young Road the Young.
Young Road.
Young
Lamb China. We are Lamb China.
Young. No, actually, Yang Ren. I just realized Yang Ren is foreigners.
Oh, Yangqi. Yeah, international guys, international people.
Wow,
you're a
we
genius.
have amazing logo.
Wow. Okay. Artem actually really is very smart.
In the end of this episode, I want to come back to the climate because it's starting to be cold in Shanghai. And a lot of memes in Chinese social media comes out again about then like northern people don't afraid of cold, which is actually not true. Just like northern people have a central heating. And for me, Guangdong guy, the second year in Shanghai getting tough. It's freaking cold in my home. And I don't know what to do. It's like my heater isn't even not enough for my big apartment. Again.
Your luxury apartment.
Yeah, my luxury apartment. But really, I hate it. It's like, I don't know if someone ever felt this kind of, it's super wet. And when it's rainy and no sun for 2 weeks. And it's like 5-6 degrees. It's worse than -10 or -20 in Beijing, for example.
So yeah, like you said, the memes, right? In the south, because there's no heating, indoor heating except for aircon. I mean, my house is actually colder inside than the outside. I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
It's freezing inside. Like in my bed, I can actually see the steam from my breath. Like I have 2 blankets. The second one is actually, it's so heavy that it gives me like neck and back pain. But I have it because it's warm. But up in the north, as you know, they use central heating. I remember the last time I went to Beijing, I was so hot in January. I was in this apartment. I was like just in like my t-shirt and my underwear in the evening. Like I was boiling. I had to open the window because I was so hot. And it's so interesting that in winter, things turn around. Like the north becomes hot and the south becomes cold. And then it turns around in during the summer months.
I hate this, man. It will be 4 months of this suffering.
So would you ever consider moving to Beijing or Dongbei?
For the winter, just for the winter, go to the north.
Winter holiday in the north, yeah.
I consider go to Hainan on my.
Okay,
on
you wouldn't
my
move. You wouldn't live in Beijing ever, would you?
No, I don't think like northern vibes is okay for me now. I don't know. My first time in China was 3 months in Dongbei, and still like deep in my heart, I love it. But I don't think I want to live there. Again, about north and Shanghai is maximum. I'm not gonna go north. more
north.
Yeah.
I think this is a really interesting story that you told us last time about smoking on the bus in Jilin, where the driver was smoking and then some of the other passengers were smoking, and then you were like, oh, maybe I'll just start smoking as well. You just open the window, you lit up a cigarette. I think that's a really good indicator of what northern people on the whole are like. They're a lot more direct. They're a lot more informal. I think informal is a very good word. Like they're happy to be friends with you. They're happy very quickly.
Yeah.
You know, they will not be shy to come up to you and ask you a question.
Yeah, and all these questions about like how big is your salary and like where like do you have a wife? Do you have Chinese wife? Why you don't get Chinese wife or something like this? It happens for sure in South also, but usually it comes from northern people.
When you were living in the north, did people come up to you on the street sometimes?
In the smaller cities, yes, they can. And the thing is, even like taxi drivers in Beijing, they much more talkative than in Shanghai or Guangzhou, Shenzhen, for sure.
Okay,
that's for sure.
Yeah.
So it means like they're more open, more straightforward, which is actually is nice. I mean, like here, they maybe they want to talk to you sometimes, but they think this is not polite. This is again about like service, which like many foreigners think that like northern part of China is lack of good service, which they're actually getting wrong. Actually, it's just like being nice, 热情. Like northern people are more 热情, I think, in terms of start a contact with a new person.
Sure, absolutely.
热情, how like more friendly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, when southern people will know you better, it goes the same. But the first contact is for sure is more easier for northern people. Yeah,
sure. Okay, so we've been talking about this for quite a long time now. I think that it's come to its natural conclusion. But each of the topics we talked about today, we can actually expand on as its own podcast, because the thing about Chinese culture is, God, it's just so rich. When we talk about North and South divide, it's actually each province has its own vibe, each region has its own vibe, each city has its own vibe. Even, you know, cities that are very close to each other, like Shanghai and Hangzhou, they're only 50 minutes on the high-speed train from each other, and it's completely different vibes. So we'll be discussing all these topics again, but way more in depth on their own later on. As usual, you can find us on all the podcasting platforms, whether it's Spotify, Himalaya, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Please give us your feedback, reviews. We want to hear from you.
And a new idea for our new episodes. You can find us on Instagram or LinkedIn and send direct message.
Okay, so my name is Lucien.
My name is Artem.
See you next week.